Welcome, everyone. You have come to Citizens Climate Lobby Climate Advocate Training, lesson number 1. Tonight, we have 2 speakers for this webinar, Brett and myself. My name is Amy Bennett, and I'm Director of Operations, and I'm out in California. Also with us tonight is Brett, who will give us an overview of what we've covered so far and where we're going.
Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining. As Amy mentioned, my name is Brett Cease, and I'm down here in Dallas, Texas as CCL's Director of Volunteer Education and Engagement, and also helping out as the Third Coast Regional Coordinator. And so let's just jump right in. Most of you are probably already on our intro call and have listened to that, but if you haven't had a chance to do that yet, we recommend doing so as soon as you can. You can find that recording on the intro call by going to our main website there, and then click on the magnifying glass in the upper right corner, and then enter intro call in that text box there by the arrow. On the intro call, as a quick review, we covered 3 things. First, we talked about the founding of Citizens Climate Lobby and its history. And then we talked about how CCL works to create political will, and how our fundamental perspective is that politicians respond to political will rather than create it themselves. Finally, we described our legislative proposal, Carbon Fee and Dividend, which we believe will address climate change as the best first step in the most rapid, comprehensive, and equitable manner possible. In this lesson, for the first part of Climate Advocate Training, we'll cover 3 other things. First, CCL's organization and structure, as well as our values. We'll also discuss how citizens create political will and give you some specific examples and case studies of that. And then lastly, we'll go more in depth into some of the tools we use to create political will as an organization. Then we'll also have a part 2 of Citizens Climate Lobby's Citizens Climate Advocate Training. And in that lesson, we cover our methodology, our actual lobby training, and a more in-depth discussion of our policy, Carbon Fee and Dividend. And again, these lessons can be heard in any order. But now I'm going to pass it back to you, Amy, and let's jump into sharing more about our 6 core values that guide our staff and volunteers.
We often talk about the CCL way of doing things, but what are Citizens Climate Lobby's values? As Citizens Climate Lobby is growing so quickly, it's key that all of our thousands of supporters are on the same page. Our values are something we use to guide our decisions, how we respond to others, like a home base that we can return to. As a result, our organization recognizes 6 core values that are essential to our identity: integrity, focus, optimism, relationships, personal power, and nonpartisan. So let's explore each of these briefly.
Number 1, focus. Our focus is the single most impactful solution to climate change, a national carbon fee. We know will not solve the problem entirely and appreciate the work that our friends and other groups are doing. And to be effective, we do not let ourselves get distracted by work that does not support our core purpose.
Optimism. We believe that people are good and that democracy works. We're confident that our approach will work because we see progress. We stand for a solution, not in protest of other solutions. We're a community that offers one another comfort, support, and fun as we work.
I like that. Relationships. We take the most generous approach to other people as possible: appreciation, gratitude, and respect. We listen, we work to find common values, and we endeavor to understand our own biases. We know that there is a place for protest, but our approach is to build consensus.
Integrity. We're prepared and we do our research. We're always on time for meetings. Our approach is thoughtful and thorough. We consult experts and use data. We're open to new information. In fact, we solicit opposing opinions.
Personal power. We use our voices to be heard. This simple act transforms us from spectators to engaged citizens, and it reveals the true nature of democracy to us. We're volunteer-driven, trusting volunteers to make important decisions and to create and develop things that will be valued by Citizens Climate Lobby.
Being nonpartisan. We're open to all those who are serious about solving climate change. You're welcome no matter where you live, what you wear, what you do for a living, or who you voted for in the last election. We work with elected officials and community leaders from across the political spectrum. We believe that everyone is a potential ally. And now that we've discussed our values, Brett is going to tell us about CCL structures and regions within the United States.
Thanks, Amy. So let's get started by reviewing how CCL is organized. Citizens Climate Lobby is a volunteer-driven organization, and we're organized locally by chapters. You may hear the terms chapter or group used interchangeably, but they really mean the same thing. A group or a chapter is a local team that's creating political will and that creates clear evidence that citizens support climate action within a congressional district or a state. Citizens Climate Lobby has hundreds of groups across North America, from places like Madison to Atlanta, San Diego, and Toronto, as well as in Europe, Australia, Africa, Asia, and South America. Each chapter has a group leader or a couple of co-leads, and they help organize and coordinate the local activities of the group. Groups are in varying stages of development. One group next to you might have one person who's just getting started, and there might be others nearby who have more established groups that have dozens of members meeting monthly. If you're new to CCL and haven't hooked up with your local chapter, then we'll want to make sure to help you to do that as soon as possible. To help that, in the US, each group belongs to one of 11 different regions. For example, we have the Great Pacific Northwest region and the Southeast. You can see the different regions listed on the map on the screen. Each region has a regional coordinator who supports the group leaders in each of these geographic areas. And we suggest that you find your local chapter and group leader by clicking on that Find Your Local Chapter link in your new volunteer toolkit, which is right on the homepage of CCL Community. If you have any questions, we'll provide a contact right here for Amy's address as well. And we encourage new volunteers to seek out their group leader's contact information and to call to introduce themselves to get involved as soon as you're comfortable. You should be able to find this information from the email from our membership coordinator, Brianna, as well. And if you reach out to your group leader and you don't hear back from them, please let us know. Sometimes emails go to spam. We've all been there, and we can help make introductions in this case. And lastly, if no organized group exists in your area, contact us via the email provided, and we'll make sure to put you in touch with the folks closest to you. And now I'll pass it back over to you, Amy, and we'll jump in more to discussing the liaison role.
Thanks, Brett. One other role that we should mention here is that of a congressional liaison. A Citizens Climate Lobby liaison is someone who is the representative for CCL when the group contacts a congressional staffer. Since there are 535 members of Congress, it's CCL's goal is to have a personal liaison for each of those offices and their staff. The liaisons build ongoing relationships with their members of Congress and their staff by maintaining regular personal contact and by coordinating the group's meetings and communications with that office. This can be anything from sending a get well card when your member is ill, updating the office with timely resources related to climate change, or even inviting staff to a local barbecue. We're working on a very complex issue, climate change. So having one consistent point of contact with the office of each member of Congress makes the process of communicating about climate change and our solution much more effective and rewarding, both for CCL volunteers and congressional staffers with whom we're working. The liaison is the representative for the Citizens Climate Lobby chapter, and the liaison has the goal of moving that member of Congress towards supporting our proposal carbon fee and dividend. Now here's an important point of clarification. Even though we have liaisons, each CCL member is encouraged to personally write and call his or her member of Congress, and to do so frequently.
Thank you, Amy. And one last important point on our relationships with members of Congress's office is confidentiality and what we expect from all of our volunteers. So we already discussed our values and that we build relationships with members of Congress based on trust. The exchanges that we have inform us on how to best find that common ground and move the member up what we like to call the ladder of support for our policy. And when a member of Congress or their staffer considers moving in that direction of supporting our bill, the member needs to do so cautiously often. And so considering the effect of what it would have on his or her constituents is an important thing to keep in mind, as well as the fact that members have a difficult time balancing doing the best thing for the constituents while working with the political realities of re-election. They also must consider the repercussions of changing their stance on an issue, and we as volunteers should always be aware that we can never really know what it's like to be in our Congress members' shoes or to know their political terrain. So as a result, it's essential that we don't repeat or share notes or emails that we hear in our meetings. We leave it to the member of Congress, even if they are vocally enthusiastic, to make any public statement about climate change. Bottom line, whether it's a seemingly casual conversation about policy details or any other private comments we've heard, it's critical to train ourselves to respect what is said in confidence. When we consistently demonstrate that we can be trusted in this way, it then opens the door for deeper conversations that we've seen can move that member forward. I'll turn it back over to you, Amy, to talk about the levers of political will.
Thanks, Brett. So if we say our goal is to create political will, then we should clarify just what does that mean? Think of building political will as actions our chapter strategically takes to demonstrate to Congress that the will of the people is to have a sustainable climate. So what does this look like? Political will is really the clear demonstration of support back home in the congressional district, where any smart congressional member will look to find whether it's worth sticking their neck out for a change in policy. Additionally, legislators need to know a specific actionable step, not simply that we want a sustainable climate and a strong economy. They want to hear what policies we want enacted so they can act on the people's will. That's precisely what we'll get into in just a moment. But first, a bit more on why we use the methodology that we do.
So you might remember from the intro call, we've replicated the model for generating political will that's been used by the organization called Results. Results organize people by congressional districts, which is what we found is the most efficient way to demonstrate political will across America to Congress. We've learned about what creates political will in this process and what doesn't. And here's why that's important. We only ask you as a CCL volunteer to do the things that we know will have a very good chance of demonstrating the will of the people. You'll notice, for example, that we don't ask people to sign online petitions on behalf of CCL. And that's because we've consistently heard from members of Congress that they've told us that online petitions aren't meaningful to them. Instead, as you'll see, writing personal letters, engaging in phone calls, social media outreach, and personal emails even sent through the members of Congress website, both to your local newspaper as well as to your local member of Congress. All of these are some of the most effective means for building support back home for climate action. So when we take actions, we know that they'll be successful in impacting and influence our members of Congress to move in the direction of our legislation.
We've organized our actions into 5 levers, and we call them the levers of political will: lobbying, media relations, grassroots outreach, grass tops outreach, and chapter development. We'll review each in depth. First, there's lobbying. Nothing is more impactful than citizens meeting frequently with their member of Congress or their staff. So we meet with them often in order to show them that this legislation is something their constituents want and to educate them on how our proposal will impact their state or their district. To create political will through lobbying, you can become a liaison or a co-liaison for your district or state. You can attend a meeting with your member of Congress, either in Washington, D.C. or in your district. You can become a subject matter expert on a key aspect of carbon fee and dividend. For instance, how the proposal impacts the district through creating jobs, household impacts, and stimulating the economy or lessening local climate impacts. This is the most highly leveraged activity we do. The second lever of political will is media. We work with both print and digital media in order to drive the conversation towards carbon fee and dividend. This involves writing letters to the editor, writing op-eds, meeting with editorial boards, pitching local story ideas, or doing television and radio interviews. Creating political will through media might include becoming the point person for a local newspaper to watch for opportunities to write letters to the editor. You could write letters to the editor or op-eds of your own. Spreading stories and coverage across social media. Getting to know your editorial board and key reporters at your local or state newspaper. And watching out for opportunities to be interviewed on television or radio. Now, Brett will take it from here.
Excellent. Thanks, Amy. That third lever that creates political will is what we like to call grassroots outreach. And this means recruitment and education actions. We recruit and educate the public across the country on climate solutions, citizen advocacy, and how to participate in one's government. Some opportunities with grassroots outreach include tabling at local events, training to become a public speaker. Or if you yourself prefer not to be a speaker, you can help by identifying opportunities for speaking engagements or organizing the event. We also support our volunteers with screenings and home parties. That fourth lever of political will is grass tops outreach. This means building partnerships with and gaining the support of community leaders and non-government organizations on both a national and local level. Some opportunities with grass tops outreach include identifying key experts and leaders in your community and seeking their endorsement as a way of influencing your member of Congress, educating leaders about our proposal and how it will impact the local community. We seek to educate, build partnerships with, and gain the support of local community leaders and non-governmental organizations on both levels. And then finally, that last lever for building political will is developing your local chapter. Developing a movement at the grassroots level, in terms of both numbers and skills, is what allows us to lobby more effectively, to generate more media, and to do more outreach. In effect, this is the underlying lever that supports all of our other actions. Effective groups learn how to delegate and share activities across members who want to take on more. They start small and they grow out into more areas of support and focus to support even more volunteers locally to get engaged. And by growing, training, and developing talents within your group, it becomes possible to push on the other four levers for building political will. So some ways that you could help jump in here include helping organize the monthly meetings or subcommittees that are happening there, helping with the chapter communications, invitations via phone calls, emails, social media, inviting new people to your meetings, having the buddy system, bringing somebody new every month, mentoring some of the new members. That's always a huge contribution. And in short, there's so many ways to get involved. At first, we want to encourage you to do the things that perhaps you're already comfortable or familiar with. And then, like we like to say, as you gain confidence, we encourage you to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. And now, Amy, why don't you do one last quick review of our levers?
Well, we haven't gone through all the opportunities for each of the levers in this lesson, but as a new volunteer, we encourage you to discuss this with your group leader where you feel like you could immediately pitch in. So to review, the levers for creating political will are lobbying, media, grassroots and grass tops outreach, and group or chapter development. There may be times when your group experiences a lever that seems stuck. For example, you've met with your member of Congress several times and they agree that carbon fee and dividend is the best proposal. However, they're not willing to support carbon fee and dividend until there's support from primary voters or from businesses in the district. In this example, to demonstrate the support that the member of Congress needs, it makes sense to ramp up your outreach to businesses or local community leaders and also to grow your group.
So what we are trying to do is not necessarily going to be easy, but as the results model proves, citizens who are passionate, well-trained, organized by congressional district, and who have a good system of support can more than influence the political process. What sets Citizens Climate Lobby apart, in my mind, from every other organization is this. We are building ongoing positive relationships with our community and with our members of Congress in order to create the political space that allows these members to move in the direction that we want. And so, when we talk about this, building a relationship, what does this look like? Let's jump in and give you some examples. And we'll start with one, historically, about Gandhi and General Smuts. Now, this isn't a Gandhi webinar, and many of you probably already know the story of Mahatma Gandhi's efforts to convince the British to end their colonial rule of India. But before that time, Gandhi actually cut his teeth fighting for the rights of Indians in South Africa first. This brought him straight into contact with the head of the Transvaal government, the towering, imposing figure on the left there, General Jan Smuts. And so the story goes that when they met, Gandhi quietly told the general, "I've come to tell you that I am going to fight against your government." And laughing, Smuts says, "Oh, really? And do you have anything else to tell me?" "Yes," Gandhi said, "I'm going to prevail." At this, Smuts was astonished and replied, "And how are you going to do that?" Gandhi smiled and replied, "With your help." Years later, Smuts admitted that this is exactly what had happened. Gandhi appealed to what was best and most noble in me. And in his journal, many years later, Smuts wrote, I have worn these same sandals, the ones that Gandhi walked in that fateful meeting with, even though I may feel that I am not worthy to stand in the shoes of so great a man. It was my fate to be the antagonist of a man whom even I had the greatest respect. He never forgot the human background of the situation, never lost his temper or succumbed to hate, and preserved his gentle humor even in the most trying situations. His manner and spirit, even then, as well as later, contrasted markedly with the ruthless and brutal forcefulness which is in vogue in our day. I have to admit, when I first heard this story as well, I thought it was pretty far-fetched. How could we expect ourselves to accomplish exactly what Gandhi did? But the reason we share it is that it is just at what is at the heart of CCL's methodology, using genuine respect and appreciation to see the best in that other person, finding common ground and building relationships is exactly what Gandhi did in seeking out a relationship with General Smuts that ultimately moved him. And as we work to build relationships with people, we are empowered as well in that process. This is because it connects us on a personal level with whomever we're communicating, whether it is a face-to-face meeting, in a written letter to the editor, or an op-ed.
Let's step back for a bit and to connect how Gandhi's example ties with CCL's larger mission and purpose. As an organization, many people are familiar with our vision to create political will for a livable world. However, I think there's less awareness about CCL's equally critical purpose organizationally. We strive to enable individual breakthroughs in exercising personal and political power. But what does that look like? What does it mean to experience a personal breakthrough in exercising one's own power? We've all had experiences in life when we've discovered a newly found source of strength, an inner ability to realize that through our active participation in a cause, we could actually create a difference.
And one powerful example of an individual experiencing a breakthrough that encapsulates that very heart of personal transformation that CCL seeks to provide is Piper. That's her on the left-hand side. Piper is a high school student who attended CCL's national conference this past June and was so inspired by the empowerment that she experienced, she wrote the following words to Mark Reynolds, our executive director. I honestly have no idea where to begin in my gratitude for the chance to attend the CCL National Conference. Never have I found an organization that gave me such confidence I can change the world. Before this experience, I viewed Congress as a bickering political dead end. I was so inspired by these positive interactions between our citizen lobbyists and the staffers that I'm now considering running for office someday myself so that I can foster more bipartisan cooperation. Because I'm young, I've sometimes not felt taken seriously, but at the conference, I was treated as though my age and unique point of view was actually an asset to the organization. Piper's experience of personal empowerment is at the very heart of everything that our organization strives to provide all of our volunteers. Since then, Piper's gotten involved back in her home state of Utah and even given a TED Talk on her experiences. You should check it out.
As one final distinction about what we mean when we say empowerment, I think it's helpful to reflect the words of Charles Reich in his book, Power and the Law. As a legal scholar deeply involved in policymaking for decades, Reich explains that when you reach out to another person through the energy or creativity that's within you, and the other person responds, you're exercising power. When you make somebody else do something against their will, to me, that is not power at all. That is force, and force to me is a negation of power. I think Reich's words are a helpful window into the importance of why CCL communicates from a different frame. Because this experience of personal breakthroughs with empowerment is at the very core of our organization, we'd like to make sure to take a minute to invite you all to reflect back in your own lives and on a time when you too have experienced such a breakthrough. It could be a story of when you were empowered by a parent or a role model, a boss, or someone you just happened to meet. And I'd like to give an example of one time that happened to me. My son was in elementary school, and we lived in a very small community where a road was being enlarged, and cut-through traffic during construction started happening on our very block. And in fact, we soon realized that the cars were speeding through our neighborhood in order to avoid traffic. I attended a city council meeting with a fellow parent at our local elementary school. And when the city council asked for ideas on what to do, I whispered in Mary's ear and I said, they could put a roadblock up on the street next to us called Puebla. That would solve the whole thing. And Mary immediately stood up and asked them to put a roadblock in, and within a month they did. I was completely amazed.
Yeah, there'll certainly be plenty more opportunities within your own participation with CCL to have more breakthroughs in your political power, so we appreciate you getting ready to share those experiences yourself and with your groups. But for now, let's close by talking about our laser talks. And a laser talk is this. It's a bite-sized advocacy resource that's at the heart of how we learn to be effective advocates. Each talk is brief and it focuses on one aspect of our issues that we focus. We practice saying these talks aloud to each other, and we use the talks as the basis for letters to the editor, our own op-eds, as well as in our advocacy and outreach opportunities. And as we all know, practice makes perfect. Research teams have been studying this for a long time. One led by Anders Ericsson showed this very well. Ericsson, a psychologist in training, asked, what do exceptional individuals who have excelled in their craft have in common? Using examples from virtuoso violinists at the Berlin Academy of Music, to prominent musicians in rock bands like the Beatles, to successful entrepreneurs like Bill Gates, studies have continually made the case that many characteristics once believed to reflect innate talent are actually the result of intense practice extended for a minimum of 10 years. And while correlation doesn't prove causation, significant investments in time, we know, spent deliberately practicing a skill lead directly to that individual developing in that proficiency to the point of excelling past one's peers, to really be truly effective at what you're passionate about. So bringing this back to Citizen Climate Lobby's laser talks, the good news is that we don't expect anyone to practice any of them nonstop, no less, for 10 years, but CCL has dozens of these bite-sized laser talks available on our website. Here's an image of what you see if you scroll down to the bottom. And if you can see, you click on that laser talk button that's highlighted in red, and you'll find all of our laser talks on our main website. Here's a screen image of that. And they may very well answer a lot of the questions that you're probably experiencing right now regarding anything from energy policy to economics in small, easy to understand language. Now, none of us will probably have the time to reach true mastery on any of these talks. We do take the time as well as an organization to practice one new talk, both alone as well as in our groups each month, to continue to hone that craft of communication and practicing them to the point where we can actually speak them out loud without thinking. We find that this helps in our own writing and in our own talking with politicians, or even in our communication with perhaps your Uncle Vernon, who might be skeptical. And through intentional practice, you might find, even more quickly than you expect, that you too will soon be comfortable and conversant if someone asks you about a variety of different topics that you see here, from China to jobs to the economy in general. By practicing laser talks, we become very good at responding to a wide range of issues as CCL volunteers that relate to global warming. So let's put that into practice on the webinar and actually rehearse one of the most common laser talks we have for just a moment today. So during our monthly meetings, we form groups and practice saying the laser talks out loud to each other. I'll demonstrate this one, and I encourage you to do the same thing by placing your webinar on pause and doing it where you are as well. The laser talk is on carbon fee and dividend, and here it is broken up into 4 simple bullets. A fee is placed on fossil fuels at the source. This starts at $15 a ton of carbon dioxide emitted and increases by $10 a ton annually. The net returns are then returned to American households, and 2/3 break even or receive even more in their dividend checks than they would pay in higher prices. Now, we didn't get into the full details of carbon fee and dividend. We will next week, but to finish up today's webinar, I'll pass it back to you, Amy.
Once you've completed Climate Advocate Training Lesson number 1, please be sure to register for Climate Advocate Training Lesson number 2 next week. You'll need a separate link for this webinar. Click on the Take Action tab and then attend Climate Advocate Training. Have you joined CCL Community, our sister website for CCL members? You can register for a login and a password at community.ccl.org. citizensclimatelobby.org. Brianna at our headquarters will send you a login and a password within several days. You can view much of the site without a password, but to join member groups, you'll need a username and a password. And check in with a group near you. You can email Brianna at citizensclimate.org, and she can help you find the group and the group leader's email address. Email the group leader and attend their next meeting. If there's no group near you, Brianna will provide you with a state or regional coordinator's email address. If you didn't hear back from Brianna or a group leader, contact Brett or I, because some of your emails might end up in spam files, and we can help you if that's the case. Our contact information is Amy at citizensclimate.org and Brett at citizensclimate.org. We're growing by leaps and bounds, and our goal is to support you in this important work. So contact us if you need help. We'll do our best to direct you to someone who can.
Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar. We know that we may have not had time to cover or address everyone's questions and all the things that you're probably thinking at this point, so make sure to sign up for next week. But for tonight, we'll leave you with some inspirational words. It's always impossible until it's done, in the words of Nelson Mandela. And according to the poet Wallace Stevens, after the final no, there comes a yes. And on that yes, the future world depends. After so many years of so many people advocating for climate action, CCL believes that we, in the climate movement, may be about to encounter that final no before the yes begins. Thank you all for joining us, and see you on Climate Advocate Training 2 webinar.